Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Sebastian and Molly have been friends since they were children. They lived in neighboring houses and went to the same school, but Sebastian was one grade older. In the mornings, they rode the school bus to classes together, and in the evenings, they walked around the village. It was a simple childhood friendship that eventually developed into a romantic story. They recognized that their relationship was no longer friendly for a long time. From the age of 16, the couple began to officially date. The girl dreamed of city life. She constantly told how she would finish school and leave here forever with her lover. Friends' parents had a neighborly relationship, bantering with each other about being initiated in a few years. When Sebastian turned 19, he was orphaned. The boy's parents were in a car accident. The guy had to grow up very early. Dreams of higher education and moving to a big city had to be forgotten. The money that his parents were saving for his studies, Sebastian spent on organizing the funeral. He did not even have time to send documents to any educational institution. Sebastian's father kept his own farm, chickens, goats, cows. He couldn't give it all up. He decided to continue his father's business, to keep livestock, produced cottage cheese, made cheese. Dad taught the boy everything from childhood. It became obvious to Sebastian that he would not go to the city. Molly supported the young man, but did not give up her dream. Yes? What was I worried about, Sebastian? You'll come with me, Molly reassured him. You'll retake your exams, sell your small firm and your house, and we'll live together in the city. Sebastian was not ready for such sacrifices, but he did not want to lose his beloved. He mentally tuned himself to the fact that as soon as Molly entered the institute, he would have to say goodbye to his home. Just before the exams, Molly's father passed away. She was very worried about this, so she failed at the final tests. The girl could not get anywhere. On nervous ground, her mother's heart became bad, so Molly decided to delay the move. It's like something's holding her back on purpose. This is where Molly complained to her lover. Maybe that's the way it should be. It's not time to leave. You're not gonna leave your mom like this. Sebastian was here to support her. Sure, we'll wait together for another year. Molly agreed. A year later, the lovers were not destined to leave either. Sebastian was good at farming. Among other things, he worked part-time as a tractor driver. Sometimes he substituted for his neighbor, Uncle Genya, at work. Molly did not develop in any way. She took care of her sick mother. It was all unbearable for her. The mother began to feel better. The couple spent more and more time together. Am I feeling sick again? Molly complained. She had been feeling sick a lot lately. Are you pregnant by any chance? Mom asked. You've been throwing up for 2 weeks already. I shouldn't be. This place makes me sick already. I can't wait for summer. Take the exam and go away. You better take the test or go to the hospital. You're starting to feel a little better. After a few days, Molly decided to go to the local hospital because the nausea wouldn't stop. The thought of pregnancy terrified her. It would mean she would be in this village forever. From the doctor's office, Molly came out pale with terror. Fear lurked in the girl's eyes, but she pulled a smile so her lover wouldn't worry. Sebastian went with her to the hospital to support her. I can congratulate you in a quiet voice, the girl said. Are you going to be a daddy? Sebastian got up from his seat, hugged Molly, lifted her into his arms, and surrounded her. The guy was very happy with this news. How great, Molly. And I love you so much. I will be the best and happiest daddy, joyfully announced the young man. Honestly, I would not want to keep this baby, Molly admitted. Sebastian put her on the ground and looked carefully into her eyes. Are you out of your mind? I won't let my own blood be killed, not to mention that it could be dangerous for you too, he said. If I go into labor, we'll never get out of this wilderness. Molly cried. We'll give birth and move. Don't worry. We won't have money problems. The farm brings in a good income. Then we can sell everything and buy an apartment in the city. We'll wait a little longer. Molly Sebastian reassured the hopeless Molly. The girl's mother also rejoiced at the news of the pregnancy. She insisted that the child should be kept after the abortion. Molly might never have children, under the persuasion of her two relatives. Molly nevertheless agreed that it was necessary to give birth. The town could wait. Sebastian immediately proposed to the girl. They married a month later. They started living at Sebastian's house, even began to prepare the dwelling for the arrival of a new member of the family. But she did not want to do it at all. She did not imagine herself in the role of a mother of the owner of the house. And in the move promised by her husband, she had little faith. Molly saw that Sebastian liked country life. He had everything set up here. How will they make a living in the city? The girl could not imagine. More and more time was even spent on the internet. She followed in social networks her school girlfriends, who posted their trips to stores and restaurants, weekdays at lectures. Molly is surprised. It's just that someone walks along the promenade in the evening, and someone with a huge belly chews seeds on a bench. Well, go for a weekend visit to the city and walk around and see if your city is so good, Mom suggested. The girl liked that idea. Molly suggested that Sebastian go to her girlfriend's house. Nancy called Molly herself for a visit. She wanted to show her school friends city life, to introduce her young man. He had a large apartment. There was plenty of room to accommodate the guests. Sebastian agreed. Weekends in the village were indeed a bit boring, and he wanted to do for his beloved whatever she wished. In the city, Molly admired everything around her. Stores, playgrounds, beauty salons. Sebastian wasn't interested in any of that. He nodded to his friend so she wouldn't take offense, but he wanted to go home as soon as possible. Nancy praised the city life. Molly, come and see me. I'll introduce you to people like this, Nancy urged her friend. When were they alone together? You'll never need anything. You're crazy. My husband's about to have a baby. Molly said no. We have a good life in the village too. So what? What are you going to do there? Not even an evening dress to wear. Laughed at her. Duck. I told you, the baby, the husband. Where am I going to put them? Stop it. You have to make sacrifices for big dreams, Nancy said. She didn't even show her friend her real mood. She defended country life, said she was happy with it. Inside the girl, however, a bonfire of different emotions was burning. From suffocating envy to hatred for her life. Molly blamed her father, who had ruined her and her mom's health with his death. Sebastian, who, in her opinion, had not developed and was stuck at the level of a country boy. Her own unborn child, who forever blocked her path to a happy life. After a visit to her friend, Molly found it completely unbearable to live in the village. She constantly complained that there was nowhere to go, no one to socialize with. In a word, bored to death. Finally, Molly and Sebastian became parents. They had a baby boy, named David. Sebastian was over the moon. He did not leave his son for a minute. The newly minted father fed the baby from a bottle, changed diapers, put him to bed. Molly explained her indifference to the baby after labor depression. She spent most of her time socializing with a friend on social media, rather than taking care of the baby. Vanessa offered to help with the grandson, but Sebastian assured her that they could manage on their own. I have work to do. Why don't you take your mind off the phone for a while and take care of your son? I couldn't take it. One day, Sebastian David was only 3 weeks old at the time. I don't have the energy. I haven't recovered from childbirth yet, Molly replied, and made an unhappy grimace. Sebastian did not argue longer with his wife. He realized it was useless. He took the baby with him to the farm, while David slept in the stroller. Sebastian went about his usual business, milking cows cooked raw. One night, Sebastian woke up to some rustling noises. He turned on his earpiece and saw his wife packing. Are you moving somewhere? He asked in surprise. David woke me up. I couldn't sleep. Molly answered, a little frightened. I decided to sort out the old things, to see what is not enough for him. What else is there to keep? How do you put your stuff in? Well, I take mine too. I've gained a lot of weight since I got pregnant. I need to update my closet. Go back to sleep. You have a lot to do tomorrow. I know I do. You're not helping me at all, Sebastian said angrily and turned his back to the wall. It's exhausting to be so nervous. He fell asleep almost immediately by the strange night action of his wife. He didn't pay much attention to it because he thought that girls after childbirth can behave strangely. The guy was even pleased that Molly decided to show some attention to their child. When Sebastian woke up in the morning, he did not find his wife next to him. David was sleeping quietly in his crib. Sebastian admired his sleeping son and went to wash his face. There was a note on the table in the kitchen. The boy felt something wrong. His heart beat unpleasantly in his chest. He took the note and began to read it. I hope you can understand and forgive me someday. I can't live in the village anymore. I deserve better than a farmer husband. You know I've dreamed of the city all my life. I've decided to move. You're doing well with your son in the household. You won't even notice I'm gone. In the city, I'll file for divorce. I'm sorry, but I want to live a normal life. The prospect of being the village's best hostess doesn't appeal to me. Molly, Sebastian sat down in his chair and felt sick. Could she really just drop everything and leave like that? He didn't feel bad for himself. He was worried about David. The baby wasn't even a month old yet, and his mom had given up on him. For a second, I even thought he was still asleep, and it was just a bad dream. But it wasn't, and everything really happened. That's why Molly was going through her things at night. That's how she decided to leave without even saying goodbye. He pounded his fist on the table. David cried in the room. I'm sorry, baby, I woke you up, Sebastian told his son. The man himself was shedding tears, but they were not from sadness, but from anger. After lunch, Sebastian decided to go to Vanessa. He thought Molly had warned her mom about the impending move. Why are you knocking like that? Asked a frightened Vanessa. Sebastian was on edge. He was furiously banging on the goal because he thought the mother was aware of what her daughter was up to. Why didn't you tell us that Molly wanted to leave us? Shouted Sebastian in anger. I mean dump us. What did she leave you for? Because you didn't know where she'd gone and how long she'd been planning it. Sebastian kept pelting her with questions. Wait, please. I don't know what you're talking about. Vanessa was very frightened. She really didn't know what her daughter had done. Here, read this, shouted the man and tossed Molly the note. The woman picked up the piece of paper that had fallen to the ground. Read it and instantly turned pale. How could she? Vanessa said and fainted. Sebastian was frightened and started to bring the woman to her senses. Vanessa opened her eyes and Sebastian exhaled. He ran into the house and brought the woman a glass of water. Is everything all right? Asked the concerned man. The heart is showing a little, and I don't understand. Is it true? Mom asked. Her things aren't in the house. I saw her packing at night, but Molly said she wanted to go through her things. She didn't tell me anything. You know that. She didn't even come to visit. And I'm going to go look for her. David will leave you. Can you manage? Asked Sebastian. I can handle it. But where will you find her? Vanessa was visibly worried. I'll go first. Molly doesn't have any friends besides her. I'll be back tonight. Is that true? Try it. Maybe you'll find one. Sebastian left Vanessa with the baby, signed each bottle for time, and drove into town. All the way he thought about what he would say to his spouse. How would he ever look her in the eye? It was already 200 hours later when he was standing outside Nancy's apartment. He knocked and rang the doorbell, but no one opened the door. Sebastian walked out of the entryway. Lastly, he turned to look through the windows and noticed someone hiding on the balcony of the apartment. The man went back into the entryway. Open up. I saw you, shouted an exasperated Sebastian. Don't yell. I'm opening, answered Nancy. Where's Molly? Speak quickly. I don't have her, replied the girl. I'm not asking where she is. No, tell me where she is. Sebastian was furious. I don't know where she is, Nancy replied. She left me half an hour ago. She didn't tell me where she's gone. She's got nowhere else to go but you. Well, there is. You should have kept better tabs on your spouse. She's been texting a guy for weeks. That's where she went. Forget about her. Molly's not going back to the village. From what I've heard, Sebastian's emotions got the better of him. He grabbed Nancy by the shoulders from the sight and the unexpected pain. The girl squirmed. I'm going to call the police now, she said. You're the one who put her under. Sebastian gritted his teeth. Why would I do that? You'd better watch her if you don't let her go, he shouted. Sebastian flung the girl away. She lost her shoulders and looked at her guest resentfully. I feel sorry for you, but I can't help you. Forget her and live in peace, she advised. Nancy, I'll figure out how to live my life without you. Sebastian was not happy. He decided not to make any more attempts to find his wife. If she'd found a city boy, there was no getting her back. If she put her own interests above her own child and sick mother, then let her go her own way. Sebastian didn't need a wife like that. Sebastian returned to the village and told Vanessa the news. She took the information about her daughter as hard as her son-in-law. To believe that her Molly was capable of such an act, it was hard. After all, I'm always there for you. And around the house, Vanessa assured her son-in-law, you need to think about your health. It's not the first time you fainted. But in any case, thank you for your responsiveness, said Sebastian. He returned to the house, looked around, and realized that Molly's disappearance hadn't really changed anything, except that there was more space. David was sleeping peacefully in the stroller. It was the only outlet for Sebastian now. He promised to replace the boy's mother. This child would not suffer from a lack of love. After a week of Sebastian's lonely life, he could hardly manage to combine fatherhood and work. Vanessa came for a few hours every day. She helped with the baby, moved around the house. But one day the woman did not show up. Sebastian decided not to go to his mother-in-law. He called her, but she did not answer. Then he put the baby in a stroller and took him to work. Half an hour later, the neighbor came running. Call an ambulance. Screaming, she runs up to Sebastian. What happened? Vanessa is lying in the yard. Lips blue, does not react to anything. Sebastian instantly ran to Vanessa. On the way, he called an ambulance. Vanessa showed no signs of life. The paramedics quickly arrived, and the woman woke up. She was taken to the hospital. The events of the last few days had driven Sebastian out of his mind. He came home from the hospital and began to smash his home. David, frightened by the noise, cried loudly, but his father paid no attention to him. He broke all the dishes and mirrors in the house, turned over the bed and chair. Sebastian screamed loudly in despair. How would he live on if Vanessa died as well? He had no idea. When the shroud of anger and despair lifted from him, he ran over to his son, held the boy to his chest, and begged for forgiveness. From his own warmth, David quickly calmed down. Sebastian remained like that with his son in his arms. He slid down the wall and sat on the floor. Tears were streaming from his eyes. The man looked at the chaos he had created and prayed that Vanessa would survive in such a state. He was caught by a stranger who came to visit. Excuse me, does Sebastian live here? Asked the modest girl, peeking through the door. Is that me? Shouted Sebastian. Come in, don't get too excited. We're not cleaned up. And I had already noticed without judgment, said the guest. My name is Wendy. I'm from the hospital where Vanessa was admitted today. You haven't been answering your cell phone. I'm sorry. My phone got lost somewhere. Is there any news? Yeah, she's on an IV. Her blood pressure's back up, but we're keeping Vanessa at the hospital for a while. We need her ID, Wendy said. I'll get it for you. She lives next door. Let's walk there together, Sebastian suggested. He got up from the floor, put David, who had fallen asleep, into the stroller, waved him off, and went to the next house. Sebastian pretended that nothing had happened, that in his house Wendy had just witnessed utter chaos. The girl, however, didn't say a word about it. She saw the state Sebastian was in at the hospital and the story of the abandoned father was quickly spread around the village by the neighbors. Sebastian quickly found the documents and gave them to Wendy. "I'm sorry you had to come looking for me yourself." He said goodbye to the girl. "That's all right. I was just on my way home," she replied. "Come to the hospital tomorrow. After lunch, I will tell about the diagnosis and treatment plan, Vanessa. I understand she has no other relatives in the village." "No, there's a daughter, but she's out of our reach. I'm afraid this is a serious matter. She would do well to find herself." Sebastian nodded his head obediently. Only now did he realize that Wendy was a doctor. At first he had thought she was an orderly or a nurse. He felt very embarrassed that the attending physician had to look for him. With horror, he remembered the moment she had caught him. Sebastian decided to thank the girl by all means. For the rest of the evening, the man put his house in order, and even he did not remember. His thoughts were devoted to Vanessa. He also noticed that he thought too much about Wendy. She seemed like a good person. The next day, Sebastian got up early so he could finish all his work before lunch. He called a neighbor boy, Kevin, to help him. Sebastian had been giving him simple chores even before David was born. The boy was 13 years old, and he volunteered for a part-time job to help his mom. The family was in dire straits, so Sebastian agreed to take on such a young helper. "I'll be gone for about 2 hours. You can do it alone." Sebastian asked Kevin. "Sure, Uncle Sebastian. Don't worry," the boy replied. Sebastian cleaned himself up, shaved, combed his hair, put on clean and decent clothes. He wanted to make a good impression on Wendy, after what she'd seen yesterday. After all, she'd been tearing up white roses in her garden. On the way to the hospital, he stopped at the store for a candy bar. Sebastian walked up to the office, which had a sign for Wendy the cardiologist. He adjusted his shirt, straightened his back, and knocked, opening the door. "Hello, Wendy. May I be modest?" he asked. "Of course, I'm already waiting for you." Without taking her eyes off the papers, Wendy replied. She looked up at the man and smiled. It was noticeable that she was a little embarrassed when she saw the bouquet. Sebastian made sure that Wendy was indeed a doctor. She looked very young, so it was hard to believe that she was really saving a life. On Sebastian's shoulders was the carrier in which David was sleeping. The man set her down on the couch, checking beforehand if it was okay to do so. "I'm sorry to be with the baby, but his only babysitter is currently lying in your ward," Sebastian explained, embarrassed. "And this is for you." "It's okay. I love little kids. We could use it," the girl replied, accepting the bouquet. "Let's get right down to business, so I don't have to keep you long. Vanessa has heart failure. It's a chronic disease, but apparently, the stress has aggravated it. If we don't operate soon, I'm afraid there's no saving her. Surgery is expensive, but we'll do it for free. Don't worry. But we can't delay. I'm just letting you know. We'll do it in 2 weeks, Wendy explained. Then Vanessa will stay under observation for a while to make sure there are no complications. Sebastian worried about his mother-in-law as if she were his own mother. Vanessa was the only other person he had left besides David. He was weighed down by the thought of being all alone. It was as if Wendy was counting his thoughts. "It must be hard for you to be alone with such a small child?" she asked. "We manage," Sebastian answered evasively. "Don't think I live in the mess you saw yesterday. It's not a big deal. I've seen people in all sorts of emotional states," Wendy reassured him. "I don't like gossip, of course. But you understand that in the village, rumors travel fast. So I'm aware of your situation. How much do you already know about me?" Sebastian laughed. "This is the first time I've seen you. You're right, though. News doesn't stay fresh for long in the village. If you want to ask about my personal life, I would prefer to discuss it outside of working hours." At these words, Wendy smiled unmistakably. A drop of sweat ran down Sebastian's back. He was a little embarrassed as he realized that the girl was hinting at a date. He wasn't thinking about a romantic relationship. It had been such a short time since he had been single. "Okay, I hear you." That's all Sebastian could say. You treat Vanessa, please. Of course, I'll do my best. That's right, replied Wendy. She was afraid that Sebastian thought she was flirting with him. The girl had no such thoughts, although Sebastian thought she was. Wendy just wanted to appear friendly. She had only been sent to this village a couple months ago after going through boarding school. She didn't know anyone here except her neighbors and work colleagues. The girl tolerated the prejudiced attitude of the residents and senior doctors. No one took the young doctor with no experience seriously. Wendy, on the other hand, was a very intelligent girl, the best student on the course. She did her job well. She was just trying to be friendly. Sebastian had fallen into her heart when she saw him on the floor of her house with a crying baby in his arms. She realized that this man was in a desperate situation. She wanted to help them. So Wendy promised herself that she would definitely cure his relative or quit medicine for good. 2 weeks had passed since Vanessa had been in the hospital. Sebastian struggled but pulled the household along. Kevin came to help every day. The boy had learned to cope with David, and Sebastian left him sometimes as a babysitter. The man visited his mother-in-law in the hospital. The only question on her mind was whether Molly had come to her senses. Maybe she'd come home. Forget about her. Vanessa spoke with sadness in Sebastian's voice. How could I forget? She's my daughter. She easily erased you from her memory. The day after tomorrow, you'll have surgery. Try not to be nervous. It's making your condition worse. My son-in-law recommended it. Wendy tells me the same thing. She is a good specialist, although very young, the woman said. The operation was successful, but the doctors did not yet talk about positive dynamics. Vanessa stayed in the hospital for at least another week. All this time, Sebastian has been communicating with Wendy. He asked if there was a good prognosis for her health more often. The doctor's hands were open, but promised to do her best. Hope for Molly's return was dashed for good when Sebastian received a subpoena. He was summoned for divorce proceedings. The man thought long and hard about whether to tell Vanessa, but decided that hiding the truth would be even worse. How could she organize it so quickly? Vanessa wondered. It had only been a month. So much. She wants to cut ties with me. Sebastian answered with a wave of his hands. He wondered whether to take David with him. A small child wouldn't survive such a long procedure, but leaving a 2-month-old with Kevin all day was scary. Vanessa was not yet in a position to act as a babysitter. The only person who could help was still Wendy. Apparently waited until her shift was over and offered to walk her home. We'd love to walk with you, the girl replied. You do so much for us. Sebastian decided to start with a compliment, but it was true. Wendy devoted much more time to Vanessa than to the other patients. That's my job. And Sebastian, let's switch to you. We're already so close to each other. We don't need this familiarity, do we? Wendy suggested it. I agree with you. He emphasized the last word in his voice and smiled. I have a very personal favor to ask of you. Wendy looked Sebastian straight in the eyes, letting him know that she was ready to listen. I have to go into town the day after tomorrow for my divorce. I'll be there most of the day. I have no one to leave David with. The only possible babysitters are Vanessa's 13-year-old, who could use some supervision herself, and you. No problem at all, Wendy replied calmly. I'll take the day off work. I can babysit. I have 3 younger brothers. Sebastian hugged the girl in gratitude. He breathed out a sigh of relief because he thought the request would be much more difficult. But Wendy was such a nice and kind girl that all the awkwardness of the moment was resolved. I never realized you came from a large family, smiled Sebastian. That's why you decided to run away from them to the village. I kind of did, Wendy laughed. But seriously, I was sent here by the Institute, and I've always been fascinated by the vastness of our homeland. My grandmother lived in a remote village, so I've heard about how hard it is for doctors in the countryside. And you don't dream of city life. Young girls, on the contrary, aspire to civilization. Sebastian was amazed. I am closer to pure nature, fresh air and helping people, replied Wendy. In the city, it is easy to lose yourself in the pursuit of wealth and fashion. Here people are real, pure of heart. I've never met such a kind and decent guy like you in the city. Everyone thinks only of themselves. Sebastian blushed a little. He was pleased by the girl's words. He was of the same opinion. He himself had never aspired to the hustle and bustle of the city either. He liked Wendy more and more. She was a girl with a surprising breadth of soul. He looked at her and wondered how she combined inner and outer beauty. Though Wendy was a little older than Sebastian looked, she was much younger than he was. She was a very fragile and petite girl. When you looked at her, you wouldn't think she was saving human lives. My almost ex-wife, on the other hand, had dreamed of the city all her life. She traded us for it, Sebastian complained. To each his own. I'm not judging anyone. Then it's better for her. Wendy said nothing more. Sebastian noticed that she always avoided the subject. He liked that she never judged Molly for abandoning her sick mother and young son. Sebastian took David to Wendy's, gave her the formula and bottles. He thanked her again for her help. Wendy wished him luck and assured him that he could be safe for his son. By the way, Sebastian wasn't worried about David. He knew he was leaving him in good hands, but he was worried about his own condition. He had no feelings for Molly except hatred. All he wanted to do was look into her shameless eyes. He hoped to see a drop of regret in them. Sebastian entered the courtroom first. Molly appeared a few minutes later, accompanied by a man. He was at least 10 years older than her. It was obvious from his expensive suit and watch that he was not poor. Molly looked like the same girls from the pictures in her phone. She was wearing a beautiful dress that was tailored to her figure. Her hair was styled in a beautiful and lush style. Fresh makeup on her face. She had her lips enlarged and her nails done. In short, she became one of 1,000 such city girls. Molly and her men were adorned with a sea-level tan. The hearing itself went smoothly. Both parties did not oppose the divorce, although Sebastian kept glaring at Molly. Fury shone in his eyes. He wasn't angry that things were working out for his ex-spouse. He was offended that she acted as if she didn't even know him and had no son. And her mother wasn't seriously ill. After the trial, Molly whispered something in the ear of her companion, and he left to wait for her in the nearest cafe. She went to Sebastian's. "Thank you for not getting in my way and causing me problems." Quite arrogantly, Molly said, approaching Sebastian. "That's all you have to say to me." The man was stunned by the surprise and insolence. "We have nothing more to talk about." Molly thought for a moment. "How are you doing?" "That's good." "Yes, but your mom has hardly survived the news of your escape," Sebastian replied with a cheeky tone. He decided to keep the tone of the conversation appropriate. "I wasn't running away. I was just trying to save my life." "I see you're doing well." "Glad for you, of course, but you do not want to visit your son, who will not even remember you, Mom, who recently underwent surgery. How's her health now?" "What's the prognosis?" Without interest, asked the girl. "Unfortunate. She may not survive. She has chronic heart failure, so she might as well visit. Might not see her again. She doesn't have long to live." Sebastian exaggerated Vanessa's pitiful condition a bit. He wanted to touch Molly's cold heart for once. She seemed indifferent to everything. When she heard that her mother might die soon, she did not shake a single muscle, remained completely impenetrable. "I'll come when I have time," Molly replied. Sebastian didn't believe her words. "You found this man while you were still with me, didn't you?" he asked. "What difference does it make now?" "We have nothing to do anymore," the ex-wife replied, and tried to leave. But Sebastian grabbed her arm. "Nothing, you say? Nothing. And David? He's nothing to you now. Let go of me, or do you want me to call security? I told you I'd be there." As soon as I had some free time, Molly gritted her teeth. Sebastian threw her hand away. He realized that Molly was never coming. If it did happen, he would be very surprised. The man watched Dora leave and couldn't believe that just a few months ago they had been together, making plans together. It was a completely different person. The city had changed her beyond recognition. Sebastian arrived in his home village. As soon as he stepped off the bus, he took a deep breath. Wendy is right. The air is different here, he thought, and walked to the house of the girl who in a few weeks had become closer to him than his wife and the mother of his child. Sebastian remembered the look of Molly full, without sensuality or indifference. Could money and riches be so in the mist? Her mind. Wendy opened the door with David in her arms. The baby was calm, looking quite happy. Sebastian looked at Wendy, at her sincere and kind gaze. There was joy and happiness in her eyes. How different was she from Molly? Wendy didn't have the expensive designer dress, the hairstyles, or the flashy makeup, but it did not make her look less beautiful and attractive. Quite the opposite. The purity of her soul, as if by the color of her hair, the girl from the inside out. She was real, not artificial and cold like Molly. For all the parade, the former spouse did not look happy. Wendy, on the other hand, radiated joy. "I'm very grateful to you," Sebastian said. "I'm the one who should say thank you for letting me sit with such a lovely belly button," replied Wendy. "He's a surprisingly calm baby. He's not used to being coddled, fed and to bed," said Sebastian, smiling. He picked up the baby and went home. The next day, Sebastian went to check on Vanessa at the hospital. The woman was waiting impatiently for him. She wanted to know what Molly had said. Sebastian didn't know how to tell the woman what she had said. He didn't want to upset the woman. "How are you feeling?" he asked, trying to stall for time. "I'm fine," Vanessa replied. "At the end of the week they said they would let me go home." "Tell me, how is Molly?" "She's fine. She showed up with a new man. He's a big man, and she's become a big lady. They're all living richly, just as she had dreamed." Sebastian answered evasively. "She didn't say anything about me, and she's not going to visit me." "You want to hear the truth, don't you?" Sebastian asked. But seeing how Vanessa's face changed, she decided to lie. "She promised to come. She was very worried about your health, but she was ashamed. That's why she didn't come." "You're lying." "I can see the kindness," Vanessa said. But she tried to believe in her heart. She had hoped that her daughter had not forgotten about her. After Vanessa, Sebastian decided to go to Wendy to find out more about the woman's condition and to thank her again for her help. "Hi. Can I talk to you?" he asked. "Sure, I wanted to call you myself," Wendy replied. "Is it true you're discharging Vanessa?" "Yes, she'll be home this weekend. But that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Her condition is very precarious at the moment. She needs to be monitored, in case she gets sick again and there's no one around. I've offered to stay in the hospital, but she refuses. I understand, no offense, of course. You have a beautiful ward, but who would like it in a hospital? The walls help at home. No offense taken, but I'm afraid there's no one to help Vanessa in case of an emergency. Certainly not the walls." Wendy smiled, but a little sad. "I'll take her with me. Let her live with us and help with David, and she'll be under my control." Sebastian found a way out. "Yes, that's a good idea," supported Wendy. "I want to thank you for your help somehow. Maybe you can come to dinner a little embarrassed?" asked Sebastian. Wendy answered with great pleasure. Molly didn't bring up her sick mom. Not once did she even call to see how she was doing. David girl, and completely cut out of her life. She lived in her own pleasure with the new man. Sebastian was right. She even started communicating with him almost immediately after they returned from Nancy's in the village. A friend had introduced her to a rich man, Robert. The girl did not begin to tell her lover that she was pregnant. They communicated only by correspondence. The man claimed that he immediately fell in love with the girl and began to call her to him. Even looked forward to giving birth so that she could leave. About the fact that in the village she would not stay long, she knew immediately, as well as about leaving her son behind at once. The first month of Robert and Molly's relationship was exactly like her wildest dreams. Expensive gifts, travel, fancy parties. Even the divorce came straight from an airplane from a warm country. After the trial, they went on a new journey. And now, finally, Molly was back in town and had made an appointment with Nancy. "Hey Molly, tell me about your vacation," Molly asked impatiently. "Great. The country is beautiful, but with Robert everything is so bad," said Molly sadly. "What's wrong?" "He was always talking to his wife. She seemed to suspect something and didn't let us relax at all. What did you want when you started dating a married man? We'll have to put up with it." "If you want a nice life," Nancy said. "Well, you're the one who set me up with him." Molly was outraged. "I didn't ask for a married man. You're getting married in a week, so you'll have the rest of your life to yourself. What am I supposed to do?" "Molly, this is your ticket to a life of squeezing what you can out of it. And then, if he doesn't marry you, at least you won't be left with empty pockets, right?" "That's what my friend said. He promises me every time that he'll divorce me and marry me. But I believe it less and less," Molly said sadly. The girl returned to her rented apartment, which Robert paid for. She noticed that the doors were closed one turn, although she always closed them too. When she went into the room, she found that all the things had been knocked over. Obviously, someone had gone through them. The frightened girl immediately called her lover. "Robert, I think I've been robbed," screamed into the phone by a worried Molly. "I told you not to call at this time," said an angry voice in the receiver. Molly looked at the screen to make sure she was calling the right number. She expected support, but not reproach. "I'm sorry, I'll call you back," she said quietly. "Don't. I've already gone outside." "What are you saying? Did you have an accident?" Robert asked. "I've got everything blocked off. Things are lying around." "Someone robbed me," Molly complained. "Nobody mugged you. I was looking for something." "And what were you looking for in my apartment?" Molly asked, a little angrier. "Proof that you're lying to me or hiding something. Why don't you tell me?" "I've never lied to you about anything you don't understand, girl. The aide told me you went to a women's health clinic and your friend said it had something to do with your pregnancy." Molly did go to the checkup to get checked out after giving birth. The only person who knew about her pregnancy was the summer girl, but she knew that Molly had given birth to Sebastian and had no other pregnancies. So why did she tell Robert? "I went for a simple checkup, nothing more." "And Nancy must have gotten something wrong." Molly justified herself. "Maybe you wanted to lie to me that you were pregnant with my child so that I would divorce you and marry you." Robert suggested. "I had no such idea. Don't even think about it." Robert hung up, and Molly thought that getting a rich man pregnant would be a really good decision. Robert would leave his wife and be with her. Especially she knew that the couple had no children. The girl began to put the apartment in order, but she did not have time to finish. An hour later, there was a knock at the door. It was very insistent. She opened the door and saw Robert. He was drunk and very angry. "What's wrong?" Molly was worried. "Because you're just like hundreds of others." The man screamed. "I understood that all you wanted from me was money. But why are you always trying to get into my family too? What are you talking about?" Robert did not explain anything and grabbed Molly by the hair. He slammed her against the wall with all his might and threw her to the floor. It looked like he was going to kill her. He looked at her with such rage. Molly was scared for her life. "Don't touch me. You really got me pregnant," screamed the girl. The first thing that came to her mind. She decided that Robert would not touch a pregnant woman. The man's reaction was unexpected. He did stop his reprisal against her, but he laughed loudly. "What a fool you are, of course." Through his laughter, he said, "I don't know who got you pregnant, but it sure as hell wasn't me. I never cheated on you." The girl continued to justify herself. "And I can't have children." Robert suddenly said, "How many of you there are already who tried to keep me a child, and infertility failed all." Molly was even more frightened. She decided that now Robert would definitely finish the beating he had started. "I understand everything with you," the man said. "Until the end of the month, the apartment is paid. You lived up to it. And from then on, it's up to you. You can move out. You can pay yourself. You can delete my number. and I suggest you don't mention me again." Robert left with a loud slam on the door. Molly heard that he continued laughing in the entryway. She immediately dialed her friend's number. "Nancy, what did you tell Robert about me?" "What pregnancy?" Molly asked, without letting people even say it. "Hello." "Well," he asked, "and I said I didn't even think about it." Nancy said nonchalantly, "Switch to the video link, and I'll show you what your unwillingness to think led to." Nancy looked at the screen and pressed her hand to her lips in fright. She saw her friend with a broken face. "Is he the one who just gave you that for having a baby?" asked a horrified Nancy. "Not quite like that. But if you kept your mouth shut, this wouldn't have happened," Molly replied. "I need your help. Do you have any good lawyers? I want to file a report on this creep." "I wouldn't advise it, friend," Nancy replied slowly. "People like Robert are never punished. You'll only get worse, so just forget it. What am I supposed to do now? I can't afford to pay for an apartment like this. I don't have a job. It's over with Robert." "I don't know. Don't worry. We'll figure something out." Nancy was there for her. Molly didn't want to think about anything that day. She kept cleaning to take her mind off her thoughts. Vanessa accepted Whit's invitation. She began to live with him. It was a pleasure for both of them. Vanessa was always busy with her grandson. Sebastian could work in peace and look after his mother-in-law. The woman was still waiting for at least a call from her daughter, but she did not let her daughter know about herself. Not even a message. Sebastian and Wendy began to go on dates more and more often. Gradually, their relationship moved to a new level. Unlike Vanessa, Sebastian did not remember his ex-wife. He was infatuated with the new relationship. Wendy came to visit them several times a week to check on Vanessa's condition. She gave her IVs and injections. This continued for a month. "It is safe to say that we are out mission," pleased Sebastian and Vanessa. "Wendy, how glad I am not without your help," Wendy said, and the woman. "Try to avoid any more stress, so as not to provoke your heart. It must be taken care of," the girl recommended. "What kind of stress can I have? My favorite grandson is always at my side. You two are so happy together. It's even a pity that you, Wendy, will no longer make any more visits." Sebastian glanced at Wendy. He too liked that she often came to visit them. He was still shy about admitting his feelings, even though they spent a lot of time together. The man thought it was a show of courtesy on Wendy's part. "She's a good girl," Vanessa said. "When Wendy's gone, she's going to be a wonderful mother to our David." "What a joke," Sebastian said. He choked on his tea in surprise. "What jokes between you sparks fly? It's time for you to invite her over." "Where would I invite her?" Sebastian's mother-in-law was surprised at the suggestion. "Our house is big enough for everyone." Vanessa continued to argue. "We can sell my house. We're expanding." "You're going too far away, Vanessa." Sebastian laughed. "You'll see. You'll be together, won't you?" Vanessa finished and snapped her fingers. It had been 2 weeks since Wendy had stopped visiting Vanessa. Sebastian began to noticeably miss her. Wendy and Sebastian were probably not meant to break up, but an accident brought them together again. One day, Vanessa decided to go for a walk because it was unbearable to sit in the 4 walls at home than in the hospital. "You have a lot of work to do. Today I want to reach my neighbor," the woman asked Sebastian. "So do the children. What's the problem?" Surprised the man. "And in the fact that you cannot leave David alone. I will call for help by the hand. He's been resting for a long time." Vanessa went to visit with peace of mind. Sebastian called the kid to help with the farm and himself stayed behind to sit with his son. Kevin just needed to put feed in the feed bins, hand out the check, and clean up after the livestock. But half an hour later, he showed up on the doorstep, looking extremely guilty. "What is it, Kevin? You look suspicious," Sebastian asked. "I broke my car," the young man said shamefacedly. "What's there to break?" The man was surprised. "The mechanism doesn't turn, no matter how hard I tried." Sebastian took his son in his arms and went to see what happened to the machine. "Kevin, it's a joke," Sebastian looked at the assistant in surprise. "Why did you throw the bucket in there?" "Of course, it won't spin." "Excuse me, but this combine is expensive, and I'll place it." Started talking the man down. "Kevin, hold the baby. We'll fix it," said calmly Sebastian, and handed the cradle with David to the guy. Sebastian began to pull out the bucket, which was stuck and already bent beyond recognition, from the stern. The iron lifted easily and pulled the moose out a bit. At that moment, the apparatus spun and Sebastian's arm began to be pulled inside. The pain made him scream heartbreakingly. Kevin was frightened and remembered that he had forgotten to turn off the machine. The guy quickly pressed the off button. Sebastian pulled out Kevin's bloody hand. The sight made him uncomfortable. "Are you hurt for what?" he asked. "What do you think?" "Pleasantly," said Sebastian, still in pain from the shock of the pain, and immediately lost consciousness. The frightened young David in his arms did not know what to do. He knew Wendy, as she often came to visit the farm. He didn't know anyone else from the village, so he ran after her. As soon as the girl heard what happened, she grabbed a small suitcase, a first aid kit, and ran to help. Sebastian came to his senses and saw the face of the woman he loved. He was still not thinking straight, so he thought he was dreaming. "Loner, I'm already in heaven, aren't I?" he asked blissfully. "No, we won't let you go there yet," Wendy said. She laughed. She began to treat Sebastian's wound and was very glad that he regained consciousness after the disinfection. Wendy sewed the many lacerations on the man's arm, took her over 2 o'clock. All this time, Kevin was sitting next to her holding David in his arms. He was greatly worried about how such an oversight on his part might end. He kept asking Wendy if Sebastian would survive, to which the doctor laughed, and Sebastian himself, who had been conscious for a long time. Vanessa came back from the neighbor's house. She too was frightened for Sebastian when she saw what his limb had become. The woman took the baby from Kevin and sent him home. "You can't be left alone at all." Vanessa read it. "Stop it." Kevin was being a freak. Calming Sebastian's woman down, without punishing him too much. He was almost scared to death himself. Wendy asked, "What if he'd been sucked all the way in?" Resented Vanessa. "Come on. The machine isn't strong enough to grind me up completely," Sebastian said. "I'm not going to do anything to him. The guy's life isn't good enough as it is." Sebastian watched as Wendy deftly dealt with his wounds. He didn't even feel the pain. It felt so good to look at that girl. "Do you have to treat your wounds every day?" said Wendy. "Finishing the rescue means we will see each other often again," Sebastian smiled. "You can do it yourself, and Vanessa will help," Wendy smiled back. "That's a shame. I thought we'd see each other more often. I'm ready for your invitations at all times." "Then expect a call," Sebastian replied cheerfully. The man was also glad of what had befallen him, this misfortune. He was very pleased to feel the warmth and tenderness about Lenya's hands. He could see how scared she was for him, and how diligently she tried to hold him to keep the pain away, waiting 3 days for his arm to heal a bit. Sebastian asked the girl out on a date where he decided to confess his feelings and propose that they officially become a couple. He took longer than usual to get ready. Vanessa was ironing his suit and shirt. Sebastian was very nervous, and when he saw Wendy, his excitement grew even more. After a short walk, the couple stopped for a picnic on the banks of a local river. It was a beautiful and quiet place. All the couples in love loved it. Sebastian and Molly used to spend evenings here. "Wendy, there's something I've been wanting to tell you for a long time." Sebastian was having trouble forming words into sentences. He was very nervous. Wendy noticed this and put her palm on his hand. She wanted to show him that she had already guessed what he wanted to say. "And it's mutual. You've become very important to me," Sebastian continued, his voice trembling with excitement. "I've had more than just friendly feelings for you for a long time." He took a deep breath. "I love you, Wendy." When he said those words, he instantly blushed. Sebastian felt like a young boy who was explaining his love for the first time. He looked warmly at his lover, waiting for her reaction. "Don't tell me to answer. Our feelings are mutual," he asked. "And I thought you could guess it yourself." Flirting. Wendy. She felt equally flustered, but she tried to hide it, and she was doing a good job. "Of course she did. And I've been in love with you, I think, since the first time I saw you. As soon as I saw you in a chest of scattered things, I knew immediately that you were my destiny." They joined together in a warm kiss. They didn't need any more conversation. Finally, both of them no longer needed to pretend. From that day on, Wendy and Sebastian did not want to part. Vanessa was looking forward to Sebastian's return. She wanted to know how it had gone. A woman's curiosity kept her awake. She waited for her former son-in-law. "How did it go?" she asked when Sebastian returned home. Though by the look on the man's face, it was clear enough. "Everything's fine," he replied. "We are now officially together." "Robert to God," Vanessa exclaimed. "When can we expect Wendy?" "What do you mean? Why wait for her?" "I don't get it, Sebastian. Didn't you ask her to move in with you?" "Not right away," and Vanessa. Sebastian laughed. "We just started seeing each other, and you're just going straight to us. What's the holdup?" The woman was surprised. Long wait, and really did not have to wait. In a week, Sebastian offered Wendy to move in with him. Wendy immediately agreed. That's how the four of them started living together. Sebastian, Wendy, Vanessa, and little David, who finally found a complete family. Wendy got along very well with the baby. She replaced his mom. The girl considered the boy her son. It seemed that he also recognized her as a mother. Molly began to look for a job in the city. She did not want to move out of the spacious apartment. The girl had some savings. According to her calculations, it would be enough for 3 months of rent, but she needed something to live on. Nancy offered Molly a job as an assistant in her fiance's office. "Maybe you'd better introduce me to some other rich friend," Molly joked in response to the offer. "There will be many of Stephen's friends at the wedding. They're all influential and successful. But if anything, my offer still stands," her friend replied. Molly wore her best outfit to the wedding. It rivaled the bride herself in brightness. She twirled around the groom's friends, trying to attract attention, even coming up to meet them. But none of the guys paid any attention to her. "Maybe someone was asking about me," Molly asked Nancy a few days after the wedding. "Not Molly. I can't help you with anything else," sadly, the friend replied. For a few months, Molly was able to live on her savings. Then she started giving away jewelry that Robert had given her. She continued to try to meet men, but never got serious. When the money became noticeably less, Molly finally accepted a position as an assistant at Stephen's firm. Her salary was good, but it was still not enough for all her needs. The girl had already gotten used to living large. Molly blamed only her friend Nancy for what had happened. To get back at her, she decided to steal Stephen away from her. One day, she dressed too fancy for the office atmosphere. It was noticed by all her coworkers. "Molly, are you having a party?" Stephen asked, with a big smile on your face. "Yes, it's my birthday," Molly lied. Stephen got a little nervous. How could he miss this moment? It was customary at his firm to celebrate employees' birthdays. He decided to make up for it quickly. That's right. I wrote you a bonus. Come back after hours," he said. "Why don't you come over to my place? I've got the table ready. We'll have a sit-down, and the girls from the department will be here." Molly suggested it. Stephen agreed. He was already embarrassed that he had forgotten about such an event. She hadn't even prepared anything. The plan had been brewing in her head. As soon as Stephen mentioned the birthday party, she quickly ran to the store and bought fruit and wine. On the way, the girl ran into a lingerie store to buy a seduction kit. By the end of the office, Molly had quickly constructed a festive table. Of course, she hadn't invited anyone else. "Where is everyone?" asked a surprised Stephen when he found the table set for 2. "They'll come later." Molly dismissed the answer. As soon as they were seated at the table, Molly began her seduction. She made jokes with explicit innuendo. She behaved in a rather licentious manner. Stephen was uncomfortable with her behavior. The girl came closer and closer to him. In the end, Stephen handed Molly the envelope with congratulations and left. Had he guessed what Molly wanted to accomplish? In the evening, Stephen asked Nancy why she didn't wish her best friend a happy birthday, to which she replied that Molly was born in winter. Guests. It all made sense. He decided not to tell his wife about Molly's actions. The next day, Molly became animated when she saw Stephen approaching her, would do something like that again. "I'll fire you and tell you everything." In a stern voice, he said, "Do you understand me?" Molly nodded her head silently. She felt ashamed of her behavior, but more hurt that it hadn't worked out. Why had she been so lucky to get such a faithful husband? Envy for her friend continued to choke the girl. She simply hated her classmate. It seemed that life was playing a joke on Molly and purposely buried her deeper and deeper. 2 years passed. Wendy and Sebastian signed their marriage after 6 months of living together. David had grown up. He had already started talking, and his first word was "mommy," addressed to Wendy. Sebastian did not explain to the 2-year-old that his real mother had left him for a better life in the city. Vanessa finally recovered but continued to live with Sebastian. She babysat the boy, helped with household chores. The woman became attached to Wendy as if she were her own daughter. She admired her kindness, her sincerity. She was surprised how Wendy could cope with the boy so easily, and even thought she could manage everything. Once in a while, Vanessa thought of her daughter. She was hurt that she hadn't even bothered to write a message, let alone call. Molly never once reminded her of herself, never took an interest in her mother's life. Molly continued to work for Stephen. Her attempts to get a rich fiancé were unsuccessful. She began to look much worse, because the money for the gym and beautician was no longer enough. The woman became despondent. She stopped taking care of herself. She couldn't get promotions. She could do nothing but serve coffee and shuffle papers to pay for a spacious apartment in the city center. Money was tight. All the gifts from Robert had long ago lain in Lombardy. The money was spent. Molly moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of town. She finally despaired. Not the kind of life the girl had dreamed of when she quit, all shunned from the village. "Nancy, I shared my sadness with my friend Molly in utter despondency, and that's the dream life. Molly, you can still have it. You need to push yourself up from the bottom you've driven yourself to," Nancy advised. Nancy tried to see less of her once best friend. Molly was out of her league now, but it was a shame to leave her behind. So once in a while, she would respond to Molly's invitation. "How do you build on this day?" Molly advised. "I have nothing left. I should have just given up jewelry and started my own business. Why don't you lend it to me? I'm studying, and I'll pay you back. You know I'm expecting a baby. I've got a lot of money to spend on it. Trying to get out of my friend's way." Nancy Molly had asked her for money more than once, but she never gave it back. "Do you have anything left that you can sell or pawn for a loan?" Yeah." That's when it hit Molly. I have a house. And you're pampering yourself." Nancy laughed. "A house. That's a big word, of course. But there's enough money to open a barbershop. My mom was sick a lot. She must have died a long time ago. Is the house still empty?" "It's still there, waiting for me. You see, there's no such thing as a hopeless situation." Nancy was happy for her friend. "I'll go then. As long as the problem's solved, we can help with the sale. Stephen knows some realtors." "Thank you," Molly replied unhappily. "Why is it that your Stephen can only help me when everything seems fine as it is?" Nancy didn't respond to her friend's bards. She wanted to leave quickly and not to get into a fight. Molly, on the other hand, remained in the cafe with her eyes glistening with ideas and glittering. She decided to celebrate such an event and ordered herself another not cheap dish and champagne. The girl sang and cried at how deep she had sunk. She wasn't ashamed of her actions. She had one regret. Why hadn't she remembered about her mom's house? So much loss could have been avoided before. She was even a little worried about meeting Sebastian, though it didn't matter to her as much. Her ex-husband had a grudge against her. He probably wouldn't even speak to her if he saw her. So she decided. Sebastian got up early on Sunday. He wanted to do something nice for his family. He decided to treat his family to pancakes. He went out to the yard to get a jug of fresh milk and heard some knocking from the neighbors. Sebastian stopped to listen. After all, the neighbor's house belonged to Vanessa, and he knew for sure that no one should be there. Sebastian opened the gate. "Who's climbing up there at this hour?" he shouted loudly. Molly looked out of the bushes, frightened. Sebastian was no less frightened by this encounter than her ex-wife was unrecognizable. She had changed a lot since the last meeting. Her sides and stomach were discreetly tied out of her pants. Her hair was in a neat braid. All that was left of the makeup on her face was bright red lipstick. Molly looked at least 5 years older than her real age. Molly asked Sebastian with doubt in her voice. "Yes, I had forgotten that." The main woman in her life rudely replied the girl. "If you're looking for your mom, she's not there. I don't need her. Where you were going, go where you were going." Sebastian Molly is on the right. He had no idea what was going on. Why his ex-wife, obviously not in a completely adequate state, was climbing the bushes near her mother's house. "Tell me how to get in the house, though. It's locked." "Everything?" Molly asked. "I'm gonna ask you one more time why you're there. Isn't Mom there?" Sebastian repeated insistently. "And I'm answering you again that I don't need her." Angry, the girl said. She unhappily frowned her eyebrows and rested her hands at her sides. "And in the Duma, then why?" Asked unknown from where Vanessa appeared. Molly was stunned by her mother's appearance. She opened her mouth and stood still. At that moment, her last hopes were dashed. "Mommy, you're alive." Molly smiled falsely and rushed to her mother's neck, but she pushed her away. "How long has it been since you've been here?" And now I remember Vanessa was cursing. "You come to take the house, you're not getting anything. What are you guys doing here in the morning?" asked Wendy, who came out on the porch and lost her eyes. She was holding David in her arms. "Hello," Molly said unhappily. "And that's what you replaced me with?" "Mom, why is Auntie swearing?" David asked Wendy. Molly opened her mouth even wider. She realized it was her son, but he was calling some other woman Mom. Not to say that it surprised her, but it made her a little uncomfortable, especially since the girl was already on edge, reacted to everything inadequately. "Moms are hysterical," interjected Molly. Didn't bother to clarify to his son who his mom was. "Wendy, go inside. You don't have to watch this," Sebastian told his wife. That's how Molly continued to rage. "What did you want?" said Sebastian, coming at his ex-wife point blank. "So I could tell him that his mother left us and went to town to make a life for herself. I see you didn't do so well." I laughed at Vanessa's own daughter. "We're having a meeting here." "Yeah, it's my fault. I'm a bad person. But David should know who his mom is," Molly insisted. "When he grows up, he'll find out. He doesn't need all this upheaval right now." Sebastian said, "A real mother is the one who raised him. And you have not even put him to the breast," once scolded Vanessa. "Why did you come to take away the house? You ain't gonna get no shit. Go back to your town. Nobody wants to see you here." "Mom, let's talk calmly," Molly suggested. "And what do you want to talk to me about with a challenge?" Vanessa asked. "In private, please," the girl asked. Sebastian moved farther away, but did not leave the women alone. He was afraid Molly might do something stupid. She was acting very suspiciously. It was clear that she didn't come back because she missed him and she wasn't going to meet Sebastian. "Mom, do you live with Sebastian?" she asked in a calm voice. "Yes, and with his wife and your son, whose existence you have apparently forgotten," Vanessa replied sharply. "Since you live there, maybe you should leave the house," Molly suggested to me as if nothing had happened. Vanessa's eyes became furious and tears spurted, but not from sadness, but from anger. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. There was no way her daughter could become so brazen and desperate. "You were joking," Vanessa managed to squeeze out now. "We can sell it and split the money," Molly continued to say, "You don't live there. Why would it sit idle? Please go away from here before I chase you away with a broom," said Vanessa, barely restraining herself in the hands of her mom. "Well, you can't leave me. I'm completely desperate. I'm almost out of money. I need this house, do you understand?" Molly begged. "Go," I said, already losing her temper, repeated her mother. "I live in a tiny apartment with cockroaches. I don't even work as a secretary. I have a dream. Can't you leave me?" Vanessa's patience, it's gone. She had held herself back for too long and had accumulated a lot of resentment and unspoken words. The woman told her daughter everything she thought of her. She remembered how she had never once inquired about her well-being, how she had abandoned her at such a difficult moment, without warning anyone, how she left her young son. Molly listened to her mother slinging mud at her, but not an ounce of remorse flashed across her face. She cried from her overwhelming emotions. Hearing such words spoken to herself was not pleasant, especially when they were true. Sebastian noticed that Vanessa was screaming louder and waving her arms, and more violently. He was afraid that such an outburst of emotion was undermining her health again. He decided to intervene. "Vanessa, calm down. You should not be nervous," he said, gently hugging the woman. "Look at her. She says I should sell the house and split the money with her." Vanessa continued to resent her. "Molly, please go back where you came from," said Sebastian in a calm tone. "We didn't work so hard to get your mom back on her feet so that you could beat her up now." Molly was taken aback by this encounter. Of course, she hadn't expected Sebastian to welcome her with open arms. She didn't expect to see her mom at all, with what it would take to traumatize the child's psyche and explain to him who his real mother was. Molly also agreed. She didn't linger another minute. At once she turned around and left. Wendy watched what was happening through the window. She knew what Molly had done, but she still felt sorry for the girl. "Why did she come?" Wendy asked. "When did Sebastian and Vanessa get back?" "I don't know," answered Sebastian, "but I know the house. She was going to take it, sell it, I think," answered Vanessa. "Do you think she would do such a low thing?" Sebastian wondered. "I don't doubt her at all. I'd be more surprised if she was up to something good," Vanessa said, and clutched at her heart. "That's what she told me, to sell the houses and split the proceeds with her." "You're not well." Wendy was scared. "Don't worry, it's okay." The woman reassured her that she had no feelings for me for a long time. "Did you see how messed up she was? She used to be such a delicate, gentle girl. Now she's Babika. Apparently, things have gone badly for her. She didn't think of selling the house, you see." "Nothing good ever happens to people like that," Vanessa said. "It's her boomerang back to her. Her fiancé dumped her, so she came running. She can't do anything but suck blood from others." "Let's not speak so badly of a person," Wendy asked. "Whatever she is, life has already punished her. You are our angel, pitying everyone around." Vanessa laughed. The house. The woman decided to bequeath it to her grandson, so that in case of anything her daughter would not get a penny of resentment from him for Molly's deed. Vanessa could not let go of her heart. The visit was not even mentioned in the house, only Wendy couldn't get it out of her head. She found Molly's social networking page and offered to meet if she wanted to see her son. Molly replied that she wouldn't mind. Wendy put only one condition: David would think Molly was a mom's friend. She must not tell them anything about who he is. The girl was fine with that. "I'm worried about David," Wendy said out of the blue one day. "He's been coughing for weeks." "Yeah, but I've been bugging our pediatrician. He's already prescribed every medication he can think of. I want to take him into town. I know a friend there. She's the best pediatrician in town. Let her take a look at him," Wendy suggested it. "Make an appointment for him with your friend. You don't need me to drive you. We'll drive ourselves." "You, without distractions. Kevin can't help you yet. Why wouldn't he be able to help me?" Sebastian was surprised. His mom's in the hospital. He's alone. He helps her now and keeps the house. Wendy shared the news. Why didn't you say something?" Sebastian cried out. "We've got to help the kid. If he's seriously ill, he'll live. But it will take a long time to hold her. Maybe we should really get him some help. Make sure you go. I'll tell Kevin tomorrow. Give him some money and see if he needs anything else. I hope you won't stay there forever." Because one had already traveled. Sebastian laughed. Wendy looked disapprovingly, but kindly, at her husband. She didn't like jokes like that. In fact, taking David to the doctor was just an excuse. Wendy made an appointment with Molly. There was a small park near the clinic where they were going to see each other. The girl was very worried before the meeting with Sebastian's ex-wife. She saw how inadequately Molly behaved in the village. By correspondence, the girl did not seem benevolent either. First, she pelted Wendy with curses and insults, and only then agreed to listen to the proposal. Molly completely lost faith in humanity. She decided that Sebastian's new wife just wanted to make fun of her. Molly even considered doing something nasty to her. But remembering how David had cradled all of her needs and called her mom, she changed her mind. Molly was hurt and resentful that she had lost everything. Wendy went with David to a doctor's appointment. They were prescribed treatment. Wendy went to the place they had agreed on with Molly and sat down on a bench. The girl waited for 20 minutes before Molly showed up. She was starting to get worried that she wouldn't wait for anyone. But Wendy never lost faith in people and decided to wait a little longer. "I thought you weren't coming," Wendy said. "To be honest, I didn't want to come," Molly admitted. "Why not? I really am a strange aunt to that boy." David was in the sandbox and didn't hear what the girls were saying. Molly just looked at her son from afar, and tears were running down her cheeks. "So you're doing well then?" she asked Wendy. "I'm not complaining," Wendy replied without going into details. "I screwed up," Molly admitted sadly. "I dreamed of a beautiful life. Nothing in the end. I work in an office, not even as a manager. Paperwork, coffee. I live alone, but in the city, just like I dreamed," Wendy said, without malice. "But then I realized I'd offended her. I don't think you really need to know. Let them think you're his mom. You won't see me again." "Nobody wants to anyway, I realized," Molly said. "You don't have to burden him now, of course, but when he grows up, I don't want to cheat him," Wendy said. "He'll realize that he and I are nothing alike. David looks a lot like his father. He looks just like Sebastian." "It's true. You tell me." Molly looked Wendy straight in the eye. "Are you really happy? Do you enjoy living with a cow behind the wall?" The girl was surprised by this question. Does Molly really want to talk about how she is not at all interested in her son's progress about his mom's health? Anna again wants to speculate about the worthlessness of rural life. "I don't like it," Wendy replied calmly. "I don't live with a cow, but with the man I love. Real happiness is not in money and fancy dresses. It's in life itself. Were you happy in a golden cage?" "Only then, and I was sadly," Molly replied. "Then I really feel sorry for you," Wendy summed it up. "Despite this little guy, he's an extension of you. Every day this little guy learns something new. He enjoys every sunrise and sunset, but every new bug and blade of grass he sees. That's a lesson in life and happiness. I don't understand how you can be happy, Bug. If you've never lived a beautiful life, you wouldn't understand." "And if you have," Wendy said. "Far from being from a poor family, I've never needed anything. I went to the country on purpose because there are people like you in the city. Money-hungry people who are willing to go head over heels for what they want. And you do. But behind those actions, people lose themselves. And you have. I have seen many low people who are completely lost in their pursuit, but not one of them would leave their family in this place. And there is the greatest treasure in your family." "Thank you for the lecture," Molly said indifferently. "It's a good thing they got a nice girl like you. I have nothing more to say." Molly stood up and walked away. She wanted to get away from Wendy, from David, from everyone. She was disgusted by all this talk of happiness and purity of mind. Molly had no interest in how her child was growing and developing. She never felt like a mom. Her concern was a different thing. Where would she go now? What to live and exist on? Wendy looked at her and did not understand how one could be so indifferent. Of course, the tears showed that this girl was not entirely callous, but she wasn't worried about her son or her mother. Molly was crying because she was offended that Sebastian's life had gotten better without her, and Molly was left with no one. The bastard somehow made it work. She got married, had a successful baby and loves him, and it's like Molly had no place in the world. She didn't need anyone, and no one wanted her. Wendy never told Sebastian that she had seen his ex-wife. She herself did not want to remember about this unpleasant meeting. But on social media, Wendy saw that Molly had gotten married. Not to a banker, as she dreamed, but to a simple man. Maybe the girl had reconsidered her values after all. Calmed down a bit, Wendy didn't think of her anymore and got away from her. The girl had more pleasant things to worry about. David was about to have a baby sister. Vanessa considered herself a grandmother twice over. She loved Wendy as her own daughter and Sebastian as her own son. They were able to save money and buy a bigger house because their family needed a lot of space now.